Hello there. This is Josh Baer with the Coherence Report. I just want to give you a quick discussion here about the monumental funding decision today. I'm actually filming this the day of the announcement because I wanted to get this out as quickly as possible. This is big news. All right, this is whether you love it or hate it, and we'll talk about what it actually means for shareholders. But in the meantime, the government's putting in a huge amount of money here, so I wanted to get this out quickly to everyone. The U.S. Department of Commerce today, they announced that they were investing $2 billion in federal funding under what's called the CHIPS and Science Act. As always, there's just a lot of noise, a lot of misinformation out there, but I just want to be clear here. This was money in exchange for discounted shares. This wasn't grants. This wasn't revenue. Additionally, you should know the stock market was up quite a bit today. Current shareholders are being diluted potentially by a lot, and the stock price increase, it just doesn't make any sense. And it really just it just goes to show how animal spirits are really driving the thesis right now in the sector. So let's talk a little about the rewards. You have IBM got $1 billion. Global Foundries got $375 million. So those two kind of put in their own bucket because they're both have to do with foundries. Then you have D-Wave Quantum for $100 million, Rigetti, Inflection, Psi Quantum, Atom Computing, Quantum. They all got $100 million. So basically $100 million across the board. And then there was a small company called Dirac. They got $38 million. We'll be diving into them later on in the year. So in total, we're talking about $2 billion, just a little bit over $2 billion. In our report, though, we're going to actually detail what the CHIPS Act is, if anyone's interested in it. It's essentially, it was actually a Biden administration era initiative. So this isn't just Trump. I mean, this was something that was set aside by the Biden administration. And the purpose was to encourage people to build semiconductor fabrication here in the United States. As you know, most of that right now is going overseas, primarily to Asia. And so this act was put in there to bring some of that back onshore. And partly this act does help with that because, you know, you have $1.3 billion that went to two companies to develop their foundries, which is actually a reasonable amount. These are really big. I mean, these things are capital intensive and require a lot of funding. So you can see why you would spend $1.3 billion on two of them. But then you have the $700 million to companies like D-Wave, which really have nothing to do with fabrication at all. So it's kind of outside the purview, but, you know, it is what it is. I'm not going to discuss politics here. So let's talk about the details here. Just to be clear, these were not grants. This was actually the government buying equity stakes at steep discounts to the company's share price. At this point, we don't even know if it's real or not. That's what's interesting about this. So, you know, these weren't done deals. These were letters of intent, which are, as you all know, these are non-binding. And not only that, but, you know, as most deals from this administration, final terms will be very different from the initial press release. I'm not going to, you know, again, this is not to get into politics, but we've seen these deals over the last 18 months where, you know, something gets announced and then it changes as time goes on. So we'll just have to see what happens here. But for now, we'll just take it as face value. The other thing to know is that no money has moved yet. So if you actually look at D-Wave's own press release, D-Wave was up 40% today, by the way, on this news. D-Wave's own press release discloses that the Commerce Department, they can suspend or terminate negotiations at any time. They have milestones that may not be satisfied. And they also admit that appropriated funds may not be available. Not exactly the done deal that shareholders thought it was. And look, you guys have to understand, you know, letters of intent are just, it just means that it is what it sounds like. It just means that parties intend on doing a deal. There's nothing actually holding parties, holding them accountable to this. So just, you know, if you're bidding up, you know, you're buying shares are 40% more today, just keep that in mind. So let's talk about the signaling. You know, the question is, what does the award actually say about D-Wave? A lot of investors and a lot of the media out there, they're taking this as a government endorsement for D-Wave, but it's really not. Almost every recipient received the same amount of money as D-Wave, not including the foundry deals. Those were different deals altogether, right? But every other recipient received the same amount as D-Wave, other than that one startup. It's pretty clear that the government was treating this whole thing like a portfolio hedge. They're placing equal bets across multiple companies, different architectures. Also, it looks like this is directly related to the quantum circuits acquisition. Okay, this is not a Neuralink. The language in the award statement actually talks about unresolved engineering problems, and with our knowledge of the company, we've studied what is going on, what past government requirements have been for quantum. I'm pretty certain that the government was only interested in D-Wave for their gate model technology, which is what they bought in the quantum circuits acquisition. So, while I'm extremely skeptical about the acquisition still, I will admit it at least gets them included and considered for deals like this. So that is an unexpected benefit here. So, we will give them credit for that. The question is, what about IonQ? And, what do you make of companies that were not included in this award? QBI, that was taken as a badge of shame. But here, I think it's a little bit different. IonQ is going to be the biggest example here, but also you have Google and Microsoft. Google and Microsoft have very active quantum programs. I know we always think about the pure play guys, but they're just as eligible for these funds as D-Wave or anyone else. There's been no real analysis or discussion about this, but it really does seem like companies avoid this if they didn't need the money. Now IBM certainly has access to plenty of capital, but it looks like they did the funding through a subsidiary, so you can understand, having it go straight to subsidiary, it makes sense. But look, with the other guys, Google, Microsoft obviously have plenty of liquidity. They don't need the cash. IonQ has $3 billion in cash right now, so they didn't need to mess around with the government. And in a way, more might be said of the companies who took the money than those who actually rejected it. So that's just something to think on with this. Anyways, I wanted to keep this video brief. We go into far more details in our report. You'll find it on coherence.report, along with other reports on the quantum computing in the industry. And just go ahead and subscribe to our newsletter so you get updates as the news comes out. We're shifting to a news format. So as you see things being reported, we will be discussing them. And so make sure you get on our list to get that information. All right. Thanks, everyone.